Hello, so today we are going to analyze round 2 of the Philippine Amateur Chess Championships. It is currently still the first day, and so far I have a draw. And this game is crazy. So I play with the white pieces, and my opponent's unrated. I go e4. My opponent plays a move e5, and here I go for knight to f3. My opponent plays d6, the fill door defense, and after this I just play d4. My opponent plays e takes d4, and I go knight takes d4, and they play knight to f6, knight to c3, bishop to e7. So far, this is just normal theory. Now, what I play from here is bishop to f4. Now, normally in my games, I usually feel like playing this move, and then playing f3, queen d2. But for this game, I decided maybe it would be better to actually go bishop f4. A more aggressive option, putting pressure on this pawn if my opponent ever plays c5. My opponent castles, I play queen to d2. And here my opponent plays the move rook to e8. And here I just long castle. And now we have a game where I declared war, where I'm going f3, g4, h5, and then I can decide how to push the pawn. Maybe some h5, h6 plan, g5, h6 plan, or even g6. So you get the whole idea. I'm gonna start a massive attack. And here my opponent plays bishop to f8, opening up the rook. So I simply defend the pawn. And here my opponent just plays a mistake, c5. And normally in these kinds of positions, one principle to remember here, when you're playing with black against the Scotch, like for example, you go into this takes, knight takes line, it's never good here to play c5, just like what my opponent played in the game. Because c5 does two things. First of all, it weakens this d5 square drastically. Second, it weakens the d6 pawn. So after knight db5, this pawn is lost because of the extreme control I have over d5 with the pawn, knight, and the batter here with the queen and the rook. And the extreme pressure with the bishop on f4. As you can see, now that I put the bishop on f4, I have additional pressure. My opponent plays knight to c6, and here I just simply go knight takes d6, and after bishop takes d6, I go queen takes d6. Now I'm just up a pawn here. So, obviously, my opponent doesn't want to trade queens here because then this is just very easy for white to play. This pawn's hanging. You'd have to play b6, and then suddenly the bishop's coming in here. Yeah, you're getting cooked here. So you don't want to trade queens when you're down material. So my opponent naturally plays queen to b6 to defend the pawn, and maybe try to checkmate the king in the future. So I just decided to play bishop to c4 here. Now, what would have been better is bishop to e3. Now, I was thinking about this move, but I decided not to play it. I think it was because I generally just wanted to develop the pieces first. But as you'll see, this will be a mistake. And here my opponent plays bishop to e6. And here I can just take, and I'll be fine. I'll be fine here. After, like, the queen drops back here, or you even try to offer a trade, probably. When instead I played an inaccuracy, queen to d3. In my opinion, this should be marked as an inaccuracy. Because now the game is more complicated than it is. Because now, the rook can go here, but not right now. But after knight to h5, which in my opinion is a very good move here, with an idea that if the bishop goes here, then there's just simply this move, and you're getting cooked. What I should have played instead of allowing them to get a lot of counterplay was just trading. But I didn't really like the idea, I guess, here, having to move the queen a lot. I didn't really like this, but guess I didn't examine it properly. But anyway, after this, my opponent plays knight to h5, which is a very nice move. I play bishop to d6, which is the only move. But after rook a d8, you can guess what I played here. Pause the video to guess what I played. I played e5. e5 is a huge blunder here, because that just allows the simple tactic knight takes e5. And if I take, then I lose a queen. And If I take, then I lose a queen like this. And if I move the queen, like let's say to e3 to try and get away from the pin, and then after knight takes c4, additionally, not only am I losing the bishop, I'm actually losing the queen too, because now that threat's hanging, and this is just a disaster. So now I'm losing, right? e5. I'm winning, now I'm losing. So I decided that bishop takes e5 was the best move to play. And here I still... After this, I would be completely fine here, actually. But, you know, my opponent just plays rook takes, going for the simplest continuation. And here just playing f6. Okay, solid move. But I noticed something with f6, you know, it's trapping this knight here. If I can just get one tempo to play g4 while maintaining the bishop here, without having to forcefully trade it off, maybe I can have some sort of advantage. But I really couldn't find a place for the bishop here to still stay on this diagonal other than these two squares, until I thought of a very clever trap here. Noticing that the rook is on the d file, the bishop putting pressure on h7, what if I put the bishop on d6? Now, the bishop on d6 does quite a few things here, like pressuring the pawn. This pawn over here on c5. Now, if you take, you're just completely losing after bishop takes, and then rook takes, and I'm an exchange up. I mean, rook up. Oh, wait, no, yeah, it's exchange up. And I decided to pressure this pawn, set up the trap. You know, maybe knight a4 can come, but here, my opponent plays just rook d8. A nice move. And now I'm forced to go here on g3. And now, we'll get into why that's a blunder later. Now, my opponent has the option to take, you know, maybe just play h3, and they're completely solid here. Even though I am getting a lot of counterplay, this is still playable. But, you know, reasonably speaking, my opponent's just better here, because they have the queen, and there are a lot of weaknesses in the queen side here, like these two pawns over here. And they're just gonna set up an attack. They're gonna trade off the rooks, and they're going to beat me. But after bishop to g3, my opponent, I decided to try and after I played bishop to g3, and I was thinking on my opponent's turn, they took a pretty long turn here, and I was thinking, wait, I just noticed something. Now the rook's on the d file. Right? So if the queen moves away from the defense of the rook, then now bishop takes h7 is possible again. Like, let's say queen here or something. Then I can just go takes, and completely win the game. Not completely win the game, but, you know, have an even position now. Or maybe even better. So I noticed this. And, okay, I tried thinking of ways to get my opponent to move the queen off this diagonal. The only idea that came to mind was, let's just say they play a random move, was this move, knight to a4 here, and after the queen moves to a5 or c7, wait, no, c7 is not possible. I was just thinking of sacking, and, you know, after, like, takes go here. But after this whole line, black is still better. Why? Because they have a queen here, and they have a queen specifically for a rook and a... No, wait, they're up a piece. Okay, they're up a piece because queen for two rooks, and there's up a bishop here. They're up a bishop or a knight. You'd say knight or bishop. But anyway, there's just a huge amount of material here. And, you know, let's just say my pieces aren't doing very well. But to my surprise, after bishop to g3, my opponent plays queen to c6, just allowing bishop takes h7. And of course, I'm not going to play it in an instant. Of course, I had to triple check to make sure that works, and I just played bishop takes h7. King takes, and rook takes d8. And suddenly, the game's turned around from me losing to now suddenly having some sort of initiative here with the two rooks against the queen. Because I have a pawn advantage, and their king is a weakness here. My king is safer compared to theirs. And after this, my opponent plays b5. Okay, they're trying to start an attack, which is understandable. But I just play rook d6. Rook d6, activate the rook here. Hit these two pieces. And queen to c8 is the only move here to have some sort of, attempt at equalizing or trying to win. After this, I'd probably just go knight takes. But anyway, that's the only move. But my opponent plays queen to e8, trying to defend the pawn. And here, yes, this is also possible. While this is possible, I don't really like that, because it gives my opponent some chances here by opening up, by activating queen, maybe allowing it to go to e2 here in that line. I just simply have rook e1. I don't need to do all of that with knight takes b5 to complicate the game further. So I immediately learned that, complicating the game is not necessary, so I just played the simplest move here, rook to e1. And here my opponent plays knight takes g3, I take. They played queen to g6, pressuring the pawn, and here I just took the bishop. And after queen takes g3, there are a lot of moves here. I spent around like 10 minutes thinking of what plan I should choose here. Taking is possible, but I didn't really like this, the idea of giving them two connected passed pawns that they could use. Yes, this is still winning, but I didn't want to give my opponent chances like that. So after this move, I simply played rook 6 e2, defending the pawn, now threatening to take the b5 pawn. So after this, they played b4. And here I just played knight to e4, centralizing the knight, activating it, hitting the pawn. And these two rooks defend each other pretty nicely. My opponent can do a lot of things here. They decided to play queen to f4 check. And here I just played king to b1. And the reason why this is winning is, first of all, I'm up a knight. I have two rooks against the queen. In terms of king safety, my king is definitely safer compared to theirs, because I can use this open h file for my two rooks. They also have a lot of weaknesses to exploit here on the queen side, because the pawns are over advanced here, meaning that my two rooks here can easily try to attack it. Maybe a rook going to h5. So yeah, you see the whole point here. White is just completely better here. After this, my opponent, I think, was pretty tilted. They just play f5 without much thinking. I don't really know what the idea is, but I just took the pawn because there's nothing here. And then after queen to c4, I simply played knight to d3, blocking off some pressure over here. Also putting the knight here, defending b2, preventing the queen from going to f4 again. Maybe trying to go to the e5 square. And here my opponent plays a5, which is a blunder. And here you can pause the video to find the crushing tactic here that just delivers a finishing blow to the black pieces here. The move is rook to h1 check. And this move single-handedly just wins the game because of the placement of the queen and the king. Now the king can never go to the dark squares here. And when the king can never go to the dark squares, it can only go to the light squares. And these two light squares specifically lead to a fork. Right? And the king's only two moves are either king to g6, which leads to one of those dark squares, or king to g8. And after king to g8, once again, you can pause the video to find the continuation. Now I play rook to e8 check, forcing the king to go here. And then now they step on one of the two squares. Now we can simply play knight to e5 check and win the queen. And this endgame is clearly a win. Because, first of all, we have an extra pawn. Secondly, this pawn's hanging. And there's nothing you can do to save it. But after rook to h1 check, my opponent plays king to g6 immediately, simply allowing knight to e5 check, and now I have two rooks and a knight instead of one rook and a knight for the queen. So yeah, that is the end of the game. Definitely a disaster. I think what my opponent should have done here, c5 here, definitely a mistake. Let me just mark this as a mistake. This is a huge mistake here, c5. c5 is never good in these types of positions where we had like a Scotch-like exchange with d4 and e4, because it just weakens this square. This is something common you'll see like after some queen takes d4, they play c5 here, and after something like queen to e3 or even queen to d3, any of these moves are still giving white a huge advantage here, simply because of the fact that the d5 square is weakened, because the c pawn's already moved and the e pawn's been exchanged. With the d pawn, d file's open, d7 is a backwards weakness. So yeah, you can definitely see the whole point with c5 being a strategical mistake. Queen to e3 is probably the one I prefer the most here. With an idea of developing the knight to c3 and then playing b3, bishop fianchettos, and then I long castle, and then I play f3, and then I start an attack on the queen side and king side. On top of that, they just have a lot of weaknesses here, like this backwards pawn. So, and then I think I played a little too fast after winning that pawn, because I completely overlooked the fact that they can just play knight takes e5. I realized shortly after I played e5 that they can just play knight takes e5, and they did. And here I decided to sacrifice the queen here, because if I try to keep it, then they simply just have takes. If I go to f1, and if I go to e4, e3, it's even worse, because now they have the knight taking, and it's a threat of checkmate. So yeah, that is the end of the game. Thank you for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, and bye.